Hi everyone. We still have a lot of people logging in, so I will wait for another 2 minutes before I start.
I need to be on mute.
Hi everyone. So I hope you can see my screen about the webinar. Let me test.
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depends where you are in. So I'm Jeannie Chen, and I'm happy to start this webinar today with, I would first give a short introduction. So welcome to the EAAF Shorebird Tracking Group webinar. And today we're happy to have 3 speakers to talk about their work in the flyway. So briefly, the EAAF Shorebird Tracking Group is started last year, and the aim is to facilitate exchange of ideas between researchers in the flyway, and also between researchers and NGOs and other people interested in shorebirds in the flyway. And also, we hope that this will encourage collaborations between a lot of people and to garner support towards research of shorebirds in this flyway. So if you want to know about future webinars, you can, or other activities, you can join the mailing list. So just send an email to this email address shown on the screen. And during the presentation, please everyone mute themselves so we don't have some background noise. And in the Q&A session, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. So there's in the reactions button on Zoom, you can find this button. And also you can type your question in the chat and I will ask your question for you. But the priority will always given to people who raise their hand. And this webinar is funded by the EAAF. So yeah, so let's introduce the first. Let me introduce the first speaker, Carmen Orr. So Carmen works in the Maipo Nature Reserve in Hong Kong for WWF Hong Kong, and today she will tell us about some tracking studies they did recently on black-tailed godwits, Eurasian curlew, and Nordman's greenshank. So Carmen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jeannie. You hear me clearly, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me share my screen. Is it okay now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, hi everyone, I am Carmen from WWF Hong Kong, and I would like to share with you about a recent tracking project. This is which is based in Maipo, Hong Kong. First of all, I think you are all very familiar with this map, and the location of Hong Kong is in the middle part of this flyway. And for the location that I am from, which is Maipo and Inner Deep Bay Ramsar site, it is located in the southern part of mainland China and in the eastern part of the Pearl River estuary. As I zoom further in, the white box here is the Maipo and Inner Deep Bay Ramsar site. And the blue box is where I am working in and also based in, and which is the Maipo Nature Reserve. Maipo Nature Reserve is quite well known for the shorebirds and also as a very important wintering ground and also a stopover site for shorebirds. And as you can see, the data that our number of shorebirds usually peak around winter and also spring and autumn. As for the number of species, we have recorded over 60, around 60 species. And on average, it's usually around 10 to 25 species each month, and it peaks around spring and autumn. So why we are very interested in doing tracking in Maipo is that we would like to identify critical site for protection, and that's like where they stop and also the wintering ground and where the migration route and how they use the sites. As for the criteria for choosing the birds, we are interested in tracking the threatened species or any species that is of concern. And we are targeting large to medium-sized shorebirds in our project. For trapping, we are working with the Hong Kong Waterbirds Ringing Group and also Hong Kong Bird Watching Society closely in doing the trapping and tag deployments. And all these work are done within the Maipo Nature Reserve. And so far, from December last year to April, 8 trapping nets have been done within the reserve. And we have successfully deployed tags on the birds. And after trapping, ringing will be performed. And in Maipo, we use a color flag, which is a white and yellow leg flags. And then we deployed satellite tags afterwards, and we are using solar 5-gram PTT by microwave. So in this year, we have successfully deployed 10 tags. And these are the birds that we have tagged, and that include the 3 species, that is Eurasian curlew, black-tailed godwit, which is all of them are in the subspecies melanoides, and 1 Norman greenshank. And before I go into our data, I also look into where the birds that we have in Maipo previously have been sighted based on leg flags data, and I found that it's actually quite very few reciting records of leg flags along this flyway. So for black-tailed godwit for melanoides subspecies, we only have 1 record of leg flags that is from Indonesia, and we cited it once in Maipo Nature Reserve. As for Eurasian curlew, it's only 1 sighting with Maipo leg flags in Bohai Bay. So it kind of indicates that we doesn't know much about where the birds would leave after coming to Maipo, or where they will be heading to after arriving to Maipo. So the tracking project with this, we are very keen to identify the subwoofer site and also the important grounds. So after, first question is, when did they leave Hong Kong? For Curlew, we tagged it in January this year, and they left Hong Kong in early March. As for black-tailed godwit, while we have tagged 8 godwits, but from only 6 godwit we have data back. So for these 6 birds, we tagged it in April, and most of them left in late April, early May. For Norman Greenshank, we also tagged it in April, and then it left, is the last one that left, and is also in early May. For northward migration, the Curlew have quite a long stopover in one site, and then already arrived in the breeding ground. So this is a location. So first, it spent roughly a day and then arrived Dalian, and then stayed for around 49 days, and then went to the breeding ground. And then in the breeding ground, they stay for around 76 days. For the godwits, so it has some brief stopover. Here in this color boxes indicate the period in one stopover site. So longer will be longer period, staying in one site, and shorter, like the line, is very short, brief stopover. So you can see the multiple stopover site for some of the individuals. And then they arrive in the breeding ground in around May. So this is the location that they went. For some longer periods stopover site, they include the Boyang Lake, which is around 5 to 10 days. And also some would stay in Nianyuan Gong, and which is around 10 days. And also one stay in Yancheng for 5 days. And some several stopover site that include DPLK. And afterwards, they went to the breeding ground, and one is include the Russia-China border. And most of them are actually in Russia, like here. And around, they stay for around 30 to 50 days. As for Norman Greenshank, it has really quite a number of stopover sites, very briefly, to different sites, and then arrive in the breeding ground in June. So this is a location that include Yancheng, which is 7 days, and also in Russia for 7 days again, and in between there's some short, brief stopover along the coast of China. And then arrive in Sakhalin in Russia in early June and stay till mid-July. So in mid-July, they start performing self-migration. And for Curlew, it has a very brief stopover in one location, and then not from early August to now, it is now staying in one location only. And this is how it looks. For the orange one is the northern migration. For the blue arrow is showing the southern migration. And one of the stopover site in southern migration is here in Russia. And then it goes back to Dalian again, and showing the southern migration. And so far it's still there. And we realize it is actually exactly the same place that it used it in doing the northern migration. As for the black-tailed godwits, they started much earlier doing for the southern migration, and because they start kind of early, so they are now further south compared to the curlew and much more stopover sites in between. So this is how it looks. And first of all, after they leave the breeding ground, they still spend some time in China, northern China. And then one of them went to Chaofeidian for 19 days. And then 3 of them in Nanyuan, and 1 in Yellow River Delta, and also 1 in Yancheng. And all these are in Yellow Sea. Afterwards, they kind of went inland, and 1 has been recorded in Dongping Lake, and also 1 in Poyang Lake. And after that, they went further south, which is in Vietnam, that also has some major stopover site. 1 is here, another 1 is here, which is Kanchou. Yes. And also recent record is that 1 is staying in Yangzhang, and also the rest is here now. And I noticed the one in Yangchang has left yesterday and is now on the way to the southern part, possibly heading to Indonesia, joining the rest of the godwits. And for the sites that has multiple birds that using, and also they use both in northern and southern migration. 1 would be the Nanyuan, which has for Windy, and Wutangguan, which is A2 and A4. We noticed that the individual using Nanyuan for both northern and southern migration. And also for Yancheng, there are also multiple birds using it as stopover site. And for Poyang Lake, while for northern migration, there are 3 birds, and now in southern migration, 1 bird has been recorded using it. And also in Vietnam, 3 birds using the same location. So lastly, for the northern Norman Greenshank, the southward migration, we notice it has again some short, very brief stopover along the way, and then it stays for 1 location for quite some time by now, which is like this. So after leaving Russia, they have some brief stop along the coast of South Korea, and the whole South Korea area, it spends around 8 days, and then it arrives at Chaojinli and then it stays for more than a month by now. So that's all for our data so far, because we just tagged it this year, so that's not much that we have seen so far, but hope to collect more and gather more data on the stopover side and also wintering ground. So if you want to know more about where they are at the moment, you could actually go to Global 5-Way Network. All our birds are up there, and you could search our project, and all of them will be shown. Another way of keeping track is also to download the Animal Tracker app, which could be used on phone. And all our birds could be seen there, and also select the individual. Then there's an estimate of how far they have traveled and how many countries that it has been as well. So before I end, I really want to acknowledge our several parties, including our funding source and also Hong Kong Waterbirdsman Group and Hong Kong Birdwatching Society, who help with our tagging and trapping and also giving advice, and also our government to giving out our permits to do the trapping and supporting the work, and also Global 5-Way Network to share our data on their sites. So thank you so much for listening to our sharing, and hope to see them again. And also, if you see them in your site, please do let us know. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Carmen. Thanks for your really nice presentation. Yeah, it's really great to see like where some species in Maipo migrate to. Yeah, it's really very interesting. And do anyone have a question? Let me check if there's any question. Yeah, I don't see.
Sorry,
Hey?
sorry, I couldn't find the picture where I have to raise a hand. So may I ask my voice?
Sure. Yes.
So, do you have the exact coordinates of breeding location? And do you think did Norman greenshank have been breeding on Sakhalin, or it was just nomadic individual who spent some time in breeding grounds and then went back to fall migration?
Yes, we have the location because the data will show that it keeps on going to the same location and doesn't move much. So I would suspect it's breathing there. And yes.
Okay, thank you. So, and your data are on animal tracker applet, so it's possible to find the exact coordinates. Yeah, I'm asking because this is a place, part of Sakhalin, which is very poorly explored. It's very hard to get there. Also, we assume that most of Norman greenshank are breeding in this, like approximately this area. That's why your track is very interesting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Breeding grounds
Thank you. Thank you for your question and your remark. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. And Carmen, maybe I ask something. Do you know if the black-tailed godwits do you think they reach the wintering sites, or will some of them keep going south?
Yeah, there's a question that we have in mind as well, because we just started the tracking this year, so we have no idea where they will be wintering. So yeah, let's see what happens, whether they will start moving again or not.
Yeah. And with the measurements you took, do you know if they are because Drew has presented some months ago about these two subspecies of black-tailed godwits. Like, do you think which subspecies they are?
Oh, for the black-tailed godwits, is Melanoides.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. So Regalanto asked, how did you attach the text to the birds?
Oh, for really technical part, because it's handled by Catherine, so you could check with her if it's really technical. But we are using like a backpack kind of deployment, so it's wearing a backpack, and then it's at the back of the bird. That is, yeah.
And Catherine also wrote this partners at the chat. Yeah. So thanks again, Carmen. Okay. Let's move on to the next speaker. Oh, sorry, there's a bit of a technical issue. Let me. Okay. Yeah. Simba also mentioned if we can find some funding to check the sites you found for Norman's greenshank, that would be great. All right, so let me introduce the second speaker of today. Kimim Sinhasani is the Conservation Manager and Director of the Bird Conservation Society of Thailand. And she's also doing a PhD at Griffith University in Australia. And today we're very happy to have her to share with us a bit more about the Notman's greenshank, this endangered species in the flyway. And she will tell us more about the field surveys of this species in their wintering ground in Thailand. Kim In, welcome. And thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And anyway, I can say I'm quite new in this field, but I have a really great team that to work with me. That's why today we can come up with some information that we would like to share from our experience, especially from the field side, that we try to aim really big to scan the whole country in Thailand for this Notman species. And I can say today, I also have another lovely colleague of mine, Mr. Niyom Thongmuan, with us because he's in charge on the field survey and also work with the communities. So today, apart from myself, I also have Kun Niyom with us as well. If you need some specific question, feel free to reach out to both of us. And today, I'm a representative of my organization. It's the Bird Conservation Society of Thailand, or in short, we call BCST. Let me go through some information that I would like to cover today. I try to break through for 4 main points. What I try to cover for this presentation today, first of all, is about the introduction. What is this species and where we want to study? And also what we find out is about the population distribution in Thailand, and also about the habitat, and also some key treatment point that maybe we have to keep in mind. And from that point, what we can do next. We're thinking about the community networking group. And also the last but not least is about the public awareness and about the social movement. So let me pinpoint a bit. We are from here like a small country with like beautiful shape that we really believe Notman greenshank visit our countries. Let me give you more information about the introduction about that. Like we know, Notman greenshank, or some people call them spot greenshank, and in Thai, we call Nok Thale Kha Khieu Lai Jut. They have a beautiful, unique characteristic. And once they visit us, it's like a non-breeding season like this. So that's why their character is look like cute and attract many people at the moment. And the thing that we find that out, and I think everyone already knows that as well, is like they start from Russia, pass along this line, past Thailand and up to Australia. And the place for us, for them, is about a kind of the resting site during the winter migratory season. And during that time that they visit us, we consider it's like winter in Thailand. But once we call winter, it's not that cold in Thailand. That means it's quite great that the place for other many animals during migratory season that they can take a rest and still have plenty of resources for their food and for their habitat. And another thing that I want to point that out is this species is endangered species and also is protected in our government law as well. And also have some review literature and some research before. They mention like Notman greenshank mostly is found around inner Gao of Thailand. Today, we will find that out together. It's only in the inner Gao of Thailand and also is other part of our country or not. And apart from that I want to point that out is about their habitat. From previous research mentioned is in mudflat, salt pan, and euteri. So I'm more than happy to share more information that we find out recently. So that's why for our project that we try to do more about the Notman greenshank is about to estimate the population and continue monitor their population especially in our home countries. And the second thing is about identify the habitat. Apart from that is try to promote more information about Northern green shank and what we can do next, because we quite believe about the social movement. Apart from our scientific background, we also want more people to get involved with us. So let me start from the first topic. The first topic I would like to point out about the population survey. I have such a great team that we try to do the survey, led by Kun Niyom Thong Muan, Kun Suchat Dang Piyon, and also Mr. Dang Kun Seri. So the thing that we try to do is we do the survey all of this line. In total, is about 23 provinces. During the winter season of us, it means October and March, until March. And for this site, it's also cover about the Gulf of Thailand in this site, and also have another part on the Andaman side as well. The method that we try to use the survey, we also use the boat, and also we use the walking technique along the coastal line. And for this information, we get something is very interesting. For this one, we know like estimately the global population is about 900 to 1,500 number of Northern green shank. But we found from this last season is this number. It's about 356. It means it's about 30% or up to 35% of Northern green shank in the world visit Thailand. And also from that, this is like the Gulf of Thailand, and this also at the Andaman side. If you refer back to my third slide, they mentioned mostly Northern green shank have been recorded in the inner Gulf of Thailand. So I would like to say that information that is correct, but they also have the top 3 sites that very interesting. One is in Park Tale, is around here. We got the maximum number is about 245. And the second side is in Prasat, is around here. We got about 74 numbers around this site. And this is in the east of Thailand. And we also found the third site that very excited as well is in Krabi, Uchiri. And this one is in Krabi province. It's about the 20 numbers that we found for this season. From this, what we want to do next? We try to focus more about the top place that the first March record, because the thing that we try to do, we have a monthly survey with all the sites in Thailand. But today, I just want to present some part of the top site is in Park Tale in Phetchaburi province. This one we can consider is in the central part of Thailand. And this one is the place that BCST of Bird Conservation Society of Thailand have continued work in longer ago. And we also purchased this area. Now they become a private owned preserve area for the shorebirds. But this area look very unique because it's full of the salt pan. Let me explain a bit about the salt pan, because I know maybe some of you not really familiar. How is the salt pan look like? The salt pan is like a traditional practice from our local farmer. And this is quite a bird-friendly area because it's like a full of the pond with the mud flat. And we can consider this is like a human mud flat that the birds can use for their habitat, and especially for the migratory bird along the winter season. And the thing that we find in this place is in Park Tale, Lam Phak Bia area from this last season of the migratory season, we find like the peak time that we found the number of the Northern green shank visit. It starts from December up to like 250, and it's up to February, almost nearly 300. But after that, the bar chart is dropped down. So that means this is the peak season of the Northern green shank visit in Bartley. And also we work by our team, and also we work with the local communities. He is Mr. Dan, that he always have the regular recording and do the field site for us. And also this is a great combination of the land that people still living around and also full of the bird visit this site. Apart from Northman green shank, we also found about 67 species of shorebird visit this site, and the number is more than 10,000 birds visit Bartley per year. Let me get back more about something really interesting from our observation. Apart from the site, we also try to group how is the area look like and also match with the site that the Northman use in different places. And now we group about like 6 category, I'm sorry. The first one is like a usury and the salt pan. This one is a kind of the similar with the mud flat, but is like full of the mud, but also related to the word, the title by the season. And I can say from this trend, mostly this area is good for the feeding. Why? It means more feeding site and being used from the Northman green shank. Why? This one, they also visit, they're roosting sometime. But in the sand beach and the sand dune, Northman green shank also visit, they feed sometime, but mostly they do the roosting on the site. That's why I want to show how is the area look like. Like for this is quite have a good explanation. Around here is the beach, mixed with the sand beach, sand dune, and also with the mud flat along the way. And this is like the salt pan. How is it look like? And along this line is the usury that sometimes Northman green shank also use it as well. And this is from our observation that we try to identify what kind of the land type that the Northman try to use. But from that observation, we also find something really interesting along the way as well. We know one of the threatened points that affect on the many population of the bird in the world is about the habitat loss. I can say during our observation, we also find the same thing as well. We find out in many key points that we recorded about the Northman green shank and also other shorebird, they also have some excavation activity. That one, even for the water canal, they also try to expose more area, and also they try to develop the boat dock. And apart from that, once they dig some soil or the mud from one side, they will put in another side, and also have been destructive to habitat of many Northman green shank and other shorebird as well. I can say we not really just observe. The thing that we try to make the action as well. We try to contact other group of the government, and also we try to reach up to the parliament to let them realize about this situation. Because mostly in many wetland sites, and I'm sure it's happened in many places in the world, sometimes the government or the community not realize how important of the wetland area. That's why once we want to have a mega project, they thought this is like a low value in terms of ecosystem service, but that is not true. That is time for us to communicate about that. And so, apart from that, we try to review the data that we have been done on this year and also the last year with like some previous data set that conduct from other researcher group. And we find out that they still have some places that they can find Northman green shank from this map. You can see the green dot is a place that they can record Northman green shank on 2018. Why for us? We also found some, but we cannot find all the places. That means we have to reflect about the method that we use, and also reflection about because us visit the site once a month. But anyway, once we visit that place, we get the information. But of course, probably we have to connect to work with the local people to help us to record the data and also to protect the area. Apart from that, like we talk about the tracking, but because of us, we rarely have the much information about the tracking species of Northman green shank. That's why now we try to collaborate with other international researcher. Like today is the third speaker for today, Philip Milagros, that now we develop the proposal that we plan to work together to track Northman green shank in Thailand. And this one we developed with the Philip Rouse that he also in this webinar, Philip Miracles, and also some the BirdLife partner that we would like to develop it from Tingley as well. So this is a plan that we will try to make a move, not only from the data that we get, what is the next step that we try to do. And we cannot overlook the power of the citizen science, because some information that we got before is also from eBird. So we try to encourage more people to know about these species. And we have the aim, which I will touch in the last slide of my presentation, about the power of the people to record the data and share the data. But we also want to concern about the accuracy of the data that people want to share. So let me explain that later. And for our team, we still continue to do the monitoring along the site. Like I mentioned, the collaboration is the key that we want to work with other people. That's why for our project, it's not only about the survey. We know along this line is there are many key places that is the habitat of the Northman green shank. And that is also the place that there have a powerful community groups working on the site as well. And the thing that we try to do, we want to make more friends. That means we try to form the group to work with us, but they already have their own activities. But the thing that we want them to get involved is like they can develop their own activities that related about the shorebird conservation. And also they can develop their own action plan related about the communities, related about the bird, and also how we can make this happen. That's why we believe about the power of the people. So I can sum up like this. In the south part, because it's quite long, now we have the lovely girl frame about 4 group now. And we also have like 2 places in the group in the east side that we're going to work with. And also we consider this side, especially this is a key side, the central region with another 2 groups as well. So that's why at the moment, we form the group, about 8 groups at the moment, and we hope we can make a move by working with the communities. And also that I already touched at the beginning is like, we know even how hard we try to do the conservation based on our data, but another important thing is like how we want to communicate this data and raise the public awareness to make people care about some species, care about their habitat, and how we can work together. That's why for us, we develop the promotion, many material that we try to do, like this is the leaflet that we talk about the Northman green shank. We also develop our public talk that normally we call this one is bird talk. We also invite many people to share their own experience and their thoughts. And as I mentioned, we cannot overlook the power of the citizen science. And I'm really sure like some of you may be familiar with the Asian bird census. We take this opportunity to highlight Northman green shank like this year on January. We emphasize like if you can find Northman green shank in your list, you will get a special reward from us. And I can say this is work well. Thai people love Phoebe. And this is quite a great start that we try to bring people together and pay attention on Northman green shank. Apart from that is, we know the power of the young people, and we know the way to communicate with the people is from the education event. Since last year, we developed some course that we call Young Shorebird Ambassador. And this we kick off from the general information about shorebird and the habitat. And this year, we would like to focus more on the Northern green shank. And for this course, we have a specialist to be the mentor for the young people to do the video production, photographing, and also article writing. And I can say, this is quite the way that we can try to combine the big, powerful of different stakeholders, especially in our country, to work together. And this is the last, and I'm sure like some of you maybe would like to share information with me or have some interesting information to share and discuss later. Don't be hesitate to contact me from this email. And if you want to know more about us, BCST, we still have many projects apart from the Northern Green Child. You can use this QR code to visit our website. And if you like to use other social media platforms like Facebook, please visit BCST. And apart from that, I would like to say this project cannot be happen. I would like to say thank you to many people that try to make the Northern Green Child project happen in Thailand. My lovely team, BCST team, during the current team and the former team, since Kun Ayuwat, Kun Hattaya, Kun Niyom, Kun Suchat, and also Kun Seri to make this project happen. And also, I would like to say thank you to many local community that try and trust us that they want to work and try to develop the further action together. And the third is about the BirdLife team, especially Tingli, Vina, and others that try to give us the opportunity to develop this wonderful proposal and we can make things happen. Last but not least, I would like to say thank you for all donors, especially MDSAT, because they are the kick-off group that to make us to be dream come true to study about the Northern green shank in the Thailand. And also would like to say thank you to the sites because they also support our equipment and also support the budget for us to make a move to do more scanning and screening in many sites of Thailand. And thank you, BirdLife as well. And I would like to finish my talk. Feel free to do some discussion and reach out to me. Of course, we need to get more collaboration to make conservation project happen. I'm sure only one organization cannot make it happen. We need more friends. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Kim Min, for a really nice talk. Very great to see your really good work in Thailand. These surveys are really very valuable for conservation of these species, and also the outreach or the programs you do in the community. Yeah, it's really, really important. Yeah. Yeah, so do anyone have a question? So Ali asked, what method have been used for the shorebird monitoring and population estimation?
Yes, for us, the method that we use, we did the point count as well. And also, anyway, because in some places a little bit hard as well. That means like we try to visit regularly. And then we thought the next step, we would like to do the model monitoring and analysis. But I can say for us, Thailand, we are the new group that we try to do this one. That means we just start this project. And I can say this is just the first few data set that we have. And we're more than happy to hear more if you want to suggest something that is going to be useful for us. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so the next question, please. Sorry, I could not read your name. The person who asked the question last time.
Sorry, my name is Pavel, just written in Russian. My question is, do you collect some additional data, maybe on microhabitats or foraging behavior, foraging depths during scanning of Northern green shank? Because you have such a large, well, for such a rare species, have a very large sample size. And it would be great if you collect some additional information, because what we learned recently is that when we try to find some explanations why it got locally extinct in one place on Sakhalin. It is more likely related to high tide, low tide regime change, natural. But we didn't find any evidences in literature on their preferred foraging habitats, foraging depths, and all stuff like that. So you probably can fill this gap.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very good point. We try to collect that kind of the microhabitat information as well. Like every time with the MyFilm team is in the site, they also try to record that. But anyway, we realized that because it's quite huge, as you say, it's like a big country. And we have such a small team, like you can see. That's why from now, we try to encourage the local community who's going to work with us to record more data. And another thing, like now we try to identify the key site. And as you saw in the list, it's the top 3 area. And during that top 3 area, we try to be more focused and narrative, the data that we have, and continue for this year and next year as well. And if you want to share more about your thought, I'm more than happy to hear that. Feel free to share me about your data by email, and then maybe we can talk more about that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sure, I will send you some ideas. Okay.
Thank you so much.
A small follow-up on that. Do you see in your observations what food they are feeding on?
They love to eat crab. This is another research project as well, but because today about the time limitation, that's why I'm not really have much time to go through that information. But yes, if you like, we love to share information, and they love the crab the same as myself. And crab in Thailand is so good, guys.
Thank you. So Simba Chen have a question.
Hi. My comment is it is actually very important to do the citizen science, well, to ask more people to look for the Norman's green shank. But I think at the same time, you need to prepare some very good material to tell how to tell it apart from the common green shank, because I think that that will actually to guarantee the quality of the information you collected. I remember that there are some reports that Norman's green shank it also have a very major wintering ground in Malaysia too, and I also suspect from your map that in Myanmar they could probably also winter at the Gulf of Motama, but I think that you have to check we have to check with the Myanmar friends about the more carefully just done the survey, because they are very good at finding the spoonbill sandpiper, because spoonbill sandpiper is relatively not that difficult to tell from other shorebirds, but Norman's green shank could be with some difficulties. So I think there's probably some more training is also needed.
Thank you so much, Simba. This is very great point, because once when we try to promote this during AWC last year, some people also comment about that. It's like it's hard to identify Norman green shank, but I can say some people who share that information is still like our friend circle. But the thing that we want to expand is like we want other people to share this information. So that's why now we try to promote more about this species, how to identify that. But I think to give the great instruction, I think is very important. Thank you so much. That is wonderful comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So do anyone else has a question? I'm also checking the chat now. So there's comments about Ramsar sites. So as far as I understood, these sites are not Ramsar sites, the ones you found.
You mean in our site, right? It's also in the Ramsar site.
Okay, it's Ramsar. Yeah.
Yeah, I can say it's a little bit hard to say that, because I mean, it depends on which area, because we scan in the whole areas, right? So that's why in some point, in some place that we found is already in the Lamsa side, but some place is not. And so for example, like in Patale, Langtakbia, I can say it's also very important, right? But this is also a kind of the private movement by us at the moment.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
So yeah, Catherine also pointed out that it will be interesting to compare your observations with those in Jiangsu in China, where these species stop off. So do you see some resightings of, I don't know, are there like birds that were tagged, that has a leg flag that you saw in Thailand that they also see, something like that?
Can I share this? We not really find that much yet about from the flag. And I can say, I remember like Catherine provide us the great technique about to check about the flag. But anyway, as I say, for our team, they try to be more, get more experience to check about the flag. I can say for the spoonbill, it's not that hard now, but for the knotman, we cannot get that close. That is another problem as well. So anyway, now we try to use the one that technique that Catherine developed and try to make sure like we check the tag and the flag properly. But I can say from last year, we not really see much yet, but I can say we saw some as well. But I can check all the data and share with you back to Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks again, Kimin, for your really nice talk, sharing your work, and good luck with the coming season. And so let's move on to our third speaker of today, and also studying the Northern green shank, this really endangered and rare species in our flyway. And he will share with us some preliminary results on the tracking. So let's welcome Philip Malaco. He's a graduate student from the University in Florida. Welcome, Philip.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. My internet at my current location is really not very stable, unfortunately. So I'm hanging on by a thread here. So I asked Ginny to play a recording that I sent earlier today. So I hope you guys don't mind, and hopefully my internet holds out for questions later.
Yes, so I will play the recording now. So I hope, can someone let me know if you see the recording and hear what Philip said? So I see some nodding in the audience, so that's great. I will start from the beginning. Sorry, so there is no sound, so I'm sorry, let me check that out. Yeah, I think I just have to share it again because okay, so I will just share it again. I think I know where I should press. Okay. Hmm. Okay, let's try again. Sorry. So do people hear him or no? Okay. That's sorry, let me check again. Oh yeah. Okay. Let me. I think this should work.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for attending this seminar. I'm very excited to talk about some preliminary results we've been getting from tracking Nordmann's greenshank in the East Asian Australasian flyway. So I could begin by describing the incredible diversity of water birds found within this flyway and how unfortunately they've been declining for several decades. Or I can talk about the incredible work that so many people have put into describing this decline and the reasons for it and what can be done to prevent it, with of course mixed results. But I'd rather stick on something a bit more positive and talk about Nordmann's or spotted greenshank, a species that is near to many of us, and endemic to the East Asian Australasian flyway, and a rare and endangered species with a global population of around 1,200 to 2,000 individuals. Nordmann's greenshanks are also an umbrella species as they rely on various habitats throughout their annual cycle, and thus they can be an excellent tool for conservationists to protect a plethora of other water birds throughout the flyway. I'd like to begin by simply describing their annual cycle, starting with overwintering in Southeast Asia. And we know that the bulk of the species population is found in the inner Gulf of Thailand, the Thai-Malay Peninsula, Western Indonesia, with smaller populations in Myanmar and Bangladesh. But there's also this greater Eastern Southeast Asian area, an expansive area that is rather difficult to survey and that may contain unidentified occupied sites in need of assessment. From there, we jump to the Far East, which is the breeding area for most shorebirds in the flyway. But for Nordmann's greenshanks, there are only two confirmed breeding locations as of now, and that is Chaivo Bay and Shasti Bay. There are these two other regions, the Academy Bay area of western Sivohorsk and the Magadan region in the north, that may contain breeding populations, but we're really not sure. Between these two areas is the Yellow Sea, where the species stages and stops over long migration. And we know that Taozini in particular is a critically important area where perhaps the entire global population stops during southern migration. We're also curious if there are other sites that are also important to the species in this stage of their annual cycle. Then, of course, between these three stages is migration to and from. And depending on a species' migratory strategy, they may require singular or multiple sites along this journey. Of course, the question is, what sites require conservation attention? So that was really our objective, was to inform Nordmann's greenshank conservation needs by studying their local movements, migration ecology, and site occupancy throughout the flyway. We had 3 capture sites over a number of years, starting with the inner Gulf of Thailand, where doctors Chenzing Yu and George Gale caught birds by the name of D, Sin 9, and Frankie in April of 2016 and 2018. Then from there, we jumped to the Mai Po Nature Reserve in Hong Kong, where Dr. Carmen Orr, along with WWF Hong Kong, the Agriculture, Fisheries, and Conservation Department of the Hong Kong Semi-Autonomous Region, and the Hong Kong Waterbirds Ringing Group caught Suqing in April of 2022. Then, of course, there are the 10 birds that myself, Konstantin Maslovsky, and Vladimir Pronkevich captured in Shasti Bay in June, July of 2021. The Thai and Hong Kong birds were captured with mist nets that were set during high tide events and nights where there was very little moon. But on the breeding grounds, the species has slightly different behaviors. They like to perch on all sorts of various objects. So we captured 10 birds using bonet tables pictured here, and the cover technique, which is basically just setting chick decoys and playback devices playing chick sounds over inclined mist nets that green shanks kind of basically just walk into. We tried all birds using the leg loop method, and the Thai and Hong Kong birds were tagged with 4.5 gram solar platform transmitting terminals for microwave telemetry, whereas the Russia birds were tagged with 3.5 gram GPS transmitters produced by Druid Technology Incorporated. So some results that I'm very excited to share with you. But before I do, I'd just like to point out that there are just way too many results and inferences that can be shown in this short 15-minute presentation. So please, if you are interested or have conservation implications in a specific region that you can impact, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to share them with you. I'll also like to point out that the movement ecology of a migratory bird is cyclic in nature, so I really could have started at any stage of the annual cycle, but I chose to start on their overwintering grounds. So on the overwintering grounds, unfortunately, we were not able to identify any particular sites in the Eastern Southeast Asia region, but we did get some incredible movement data from the Inner Gulf and the Medan area of Indonesia. So we'll start with Thailand, where D79 and Frankie stayed from November to April and really only used just this one Samut Sakhon site for the entire period. And many of the points that were generated were found within what is now known as working wetlands, basically just rice paddies and aquaculture sites. The situation is similar but very different in Indonesia. This one bird, L1, stayed also from November to mid-April and really only used one singular site for this entire time. But the habitat use was very different. They used almost exclusively intertidal flats with very, very few points located in mangroves and even fewer in human-modified areas. So one possible inference is that when provided natural, unmodified habitats, the species prefers to use them over other areas. Now, I would also like to point out that this is exactly the site where Iwan Lando resighted one of our banded birds, one of our Shasti Bay banded birds from 2019 in the winter of 2020. So this is there's definitely a link between Shasti Bay and this Medan area. From the overwintering grounds, we have some limited data of the species migrating to their Yellow Sea staging area. And the species flew across the Tai Malay Peninsula from Indonesia, then overland through Vietnam and China, then traveled along the coast and staged on the Jiangsu coast, and then crossed the Yellow Sea to the Korean Peninsula. There's also some limited move data from D79 and Frankie, which also took a coastal region, pathway along coastal China to reach the Yangcheng wetlands. And of course, there's Suqing that was tagged in Hong Kong and stayed here from April 14th until the 8th of May, and also took a coastal route to the Yangcheng wetland. From here, we have really heavy movement data from only Suqing. There are only a few points generated from the staging to the breeding grounds for Frankie and D79. Frankie actually didn't even reach the breeding grounds, unfortunately. Its tag stopped working or the bird died about 100 kilometers away from the coast. But we do have some high resolution movement data for Suqing that took a coastal pathway up the Russian Far East and stopped at 3 unique sites, that is the Maximovka, Samarga, and Dui River mouths. All 3 of these sites were estuarine and had small patches of intertidal mudflat where they could stop. After that, Suqing crossed the Tatar Strait
and made it to Viarte or Tig Bay on Sakhalin Island. So that brings us to the breeding grounds, where we identified possibly two breeding areas for the species along the Sea of Okhotsk coast. The first is D79 and Constantine Bay, where there are multiple or many points generated within both inland and intertidal areas. So the species was likely breeding here, especially since it stayed from the 22nd of May until the 8th of July. After breeding, interestingly enough, the species stayed in eastern Shasta Bay for 3 weeks. The situation is a bit different for Suching. There were several points in inland areas, but most were on the coastal meadow and inland intertidal mudflat habitats. But unfortunately, we don't think the species was nesting here simply because the time frame is too short. Here, the species stayed from the 7th of June to the 17th of July. So that's really not enough time for pair formation, nest building, egg laying, incubation, and then brood rearing. So it is likely the species did not breed here, and it's possible the species was perhaps a non-breeding second-year bird. It's a little difficult to say, or maybe the tag affected its behavior, but nevertheless, it was a new unidentified site that the species may breed. Then in Shasta Bay, we tagged these birds with GPS devices, so the resolution of our data was a bit higher. And we were able to tag 10 birds, but 4 next to or near their nest. And we tracked these birds actually walking with their brood from the nest to their brood rearing area, which turned out to be just this border between coastal meadow and intertidal mudflat habitat. We believe this is the perfect brood rearing area for the species because the tall grasses of the coastal meadow provide perfect cover for chicks to hide from aerial predators, while the intertidal mudflat provides ample foraging opportunities for both chicks and adults. Then this is movement points from all 10 of our birds. And one of the main inferences here is that the species primarily used intertidal mudflat habitats after nesting. So before, while they were still nesting, we frequently saw the species within the inland bog, where of course the nests are located, and within coastal meadow, where they eat 9 spined sticklebacks. But after nests hatched, the species perhaps changed their foraging behaviors and really were only eating invertebrates on the intertidal mudflats. And as the season progressed, so as chicks were either fledging or being depredated, the species shifted its range further and further into the intertidal flats. So really a shift in habitat use. On the breeding grounds, the species took a coastal pathway along the Russian Far East coast and down the Korean Peninsula. Afterwards, most of our birds actually flew across the Korean Peninsula and across the Yellow Sea to reach their permanent stopover grounds in the Yangcheng wetlands. But 2 birds took a slightly different route. Suching actually flew south and across underneath the Republic of Korea, whereas P2 flew over North Korea and actually stopped in Shandong province for almost a week to 10 days before continuing his journey to the Yangcheng wetlands. And in this area, we identified 4 more sites than just Taozini as critically important to the species. So I'm not going to name them all, but of course, far more than just Taozini. Of special importance was the Gyeonggi Bay and Assam Bays in the Korean Peninsula, as well as Linyungang in western Yellow Sea. Movement data here is very peculiar. For the entire period, the species really stayed at just one site for the duration, and we're really on the border or outside of the Taozini Wetland Park, of what is now a protected World Heritage Site. And if you zoom in, you can really start to pick apart their habitat use. And it was mostly intertidal mudflat with few points located in anthropogenically modified areas. And even those anthropogenically modified areas are now, I'm talking about this one up north and the small patch in the south, were sites that are our sites that are now specifically managed for shorebirds and before aquaculture sites. So everything in between is still active aquaculture and the species don't use it. So it really highlights how much the species is dependent on non-anthropogenically modified areas. And to even further highlight how important this site is, during both northward and southward migration, at least 2 of our birds use the same exact area. And it's a small sample size, but I'm confident that other birds also have this tendency to use the same sites during both northward and southward migration. So it really highlights the importance of this Taozini Yangcheng wetland area in coastal China. From the stopover grounds, we also again have rather limited movement data of the species migrating to their overwintering grounds. And unfortunately, the first leg of the journey, no tag really recorded its movement. But the tag does again started working on the second leg and recorded D79 flying across that chunk of Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. And it recorded L1 flying a brief inland route across Vietnam and the Thai-Malay Peninsula to reach its wintering grounds in Indonesia. So of course the question is, populations that winter in Myanmar and Bangladesh, maybe they also take a more inland route to reach those locations. So a few conclusions from all this movement data is that the species may employ a jump and hop migration strategy, at least for southern migration. So a jump is where a species flies a long distance in a relatively short period of time with no stop. So here, approximately 2,000 kilometers in a little over 49 hours. And then a hop is where species use multiple sites and fly short distances between locations. So along the Yellow Sea, in the Yellow Sea region, the species took up to 10 days to finally reach their permanent stopover grounds. And the pattern was similar for southern migration to overwintering grounds and northern migration to breeding grounds, but really the sample size is much smaller than here, so I chose to highlight this particular section to highlight their migration strategy. We identified 25 unique sites that the species used throughout their annual cycle, with key migration sites being Gyeonggi and Dongsha Bays, the Maipo Nature Reserve, Yunyungang, and the Yangcheng wetlands, especially Taozini. And very interestingly, all of these sites were estuarine. So really far more sites need to be protected than we may assume for Northern greenchink. Then if you zoom out and take a big picture on the species movement, you really get a sense that the greenshanks really seem to be coastal habitat obligates, with only brief inland migrations being when they are found in inland areas. As we all know, coastal areas are on the front lines of climate change and are typically the most developed and polluted areas in the world. So really conservationists should perhaps focus on these coastal sites to really protect Nordmann's greenshanks and by proxy a suite of other waterbirds throughout the flyway. I'd like to also take this opportunity to propose that the East Asian Australasian Flyway Conservation community consider creating an international Nordmann's greenshank task force or working group so we can better collaborate throughout the flyway in protecting critical sites for the species and hopefully other waterbirds in the flyway. So future steps, we're hoping to expand these tagging efforts beyond Thailand and Shasti Bay. So we're hoping to start tagging birds in the Yellow Sea region and Indonesia, Malaysia. So please, if you're interested, if you believe that we can tag greenshanks in your part of the world, please reach out and we can get the process started. And you can join Team Greenshank. So with that, I'd really like to thank our sponsors, the Wildlife Conservation Society, the Russian Academy of Sciences, the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership for their continued support, Druid Telemetry provided many of the tags that we use in Shasta Bay, and WaiterQuest provided quite a bit of technology to better monitor these birds' equipment. And of course, we'd like to thank Dr. Jimmy Choi, who's been instrumental in troubleshooting a lot of the problems we were having with some GPS tags. So thank you, Dr. Jimmy Choi. Without you, this project would not have gone as smoothly. And thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks a lot, Philip, for your really nice presentation. So Philip is here to answer our questions. Are there any questions? Right.
Hopefully the inner hold out.
Yes, I can still hear you and see you. Yeah, really, really nice work, and nice that you put together also the tracks from the other places to make some more general conclusions. Yeah, it's really important information to protect this species. Let me check also in the chat if there's any question. Don't see any yet. So will you tag more birds in the future? Can you tell us a bit more about your plans?
Yeah, I'd love to. So as Kim mentioned, we are hoping to tag a few green shanks this coming winter in the Inner Gulf of Thailand, perhaps the Pak Thali site and a few others in the Inner Gulf and along the peninsula. So that'd be excellent. That'd be wonderful if hopefully we can have opportunities to tag them in other areas as well in the future. Like I mentioned, Indonesia is a critically important area for green shanks, so that'd be very interesting to see where they go from there. And as Pavel was mentioning before, you know, on the Western Sakhalin side, where Suching was maybe nesting, it's not really certain, but we are hoping to send a team there next summer as well to tag birds if it works out.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that will be. Thanks. Yeah, all this will be great to learn more about the species. So yeah, so Danny Rogers have a question. He asked, can you identify molting areas for Nordmann's greenshank? Both areas where they do their annual primary molts, presumably at particular area at southward migration, and where they carry out the rapid molt to breeding plumage during northward migration. Do you have any idea about these locations?
Well, of course, most of my research takes place on the breeding grounds, so before the birds start to molt. But from the literature, it seems that they pretty much do an entire molt on their stopover grounds in the Jiangsu province. I wouldn't be surprised if they were also starting, you know, some body molt on those brief staging sites. For example, Liuanyangang, where P2 stayed for a while, or on the Korean Peninsula, where they also stayed for a week or so. So I wouldn't be surprised if they you know, did a brief molt there as well. But I think most of it is in Jiangsu.
Ah, I see. Thanks.
I think Dr. Jimmy Choi or others would be more informed on their molts than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Philip. I think you are right. For the Nordmann's greenshank, most, if not all of them, actually undergo the primary molt when they stop over during southward migration at the Jiangsu coast, and that's for primary molt. And for the breeding plumage, I have no idea, but based on the tracking records of Xiuqing, which stops very, very briefly during the northward migration in Jiangsu coast, I think 10 days or something. So I suspect that for the breeding plumage, they probably do most of it in their wintering sites. That's my guess.
Mhm. Okay.
Jenny, this is Rick Langto. I had my hand up, but I just wanted to chime in. One of the last things that Philip had on this presentation was whether it'd be a good idea to form an international task force underneath the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. And that's something that's not a small undertaking, but is a very feasible undertaking. I think what it really requires is getting a show of force, so to speak, people from throughout their flyway that are interested in being part of that task force, and then some communication with Doug Watkins or other people in the Secretariat to express an interest and see whether they would be willing to entertain adding a task force. There is a meeting coming up in March where something like that could be proposed. It could be proposed through the Shorebird Working Group as well, but it really, I think, should merit being its own task force. There was some debate during the prior meeting of the partners about what's the difference between a working group and a task force. And I think the task force is supposed to be a short-term, very focused objective. But of course, there's a spoon-billed sandpiper task force, which is not a short objective either. So it's a little amorphous, but either way, a working group or a task force, I think, is very feasible and something that could happen if enough people banded together to really show that there's an interest, because it's not just forming the task force, it's actually then meeting and implementing objectives and doing something as a task force, which is really the difficult part. So anyway, I encourage you to think about that and for people to reach out to Philip if they're interested in joining the task force, and I'd be happy to help however I can to try to make that happen.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, so Jimmy Choi also shared Mold's paper about the Mold strategy that covers also the Mold strategy of Norman's Greenshank. And yeah, so Dingley also say that some people did parallel regional counts over 2021 and 2022 winter, and seems like the biggest wintering sites are in the Gulf of Thailand, followed by North Sumatra province coast, Pandan coast, and Vietnam Mekong Delta. So there's a bit more information about the wintering areas from surveys. Also, Simba raised his hand. Simba, please.
Thanks. Just a bit responding to the task force of the Norman's Greenshank. I remember that about 10 years ago, the Spoonbill Sandpiper task force also raised the same question of whether they could also be taken care of the Norman's Greenshank. I think it makes some sense in a way because you know that for the whole Shorebird working group, it covered from Alaska down to Australia, but Spoonbill Sandpiper is only a section in between, but it does not really wintering further south to Australia. And also so far the Spoonbill Sandpiper task force has been a very active task force, very focused. So I would just think that maybe you will find many people actually will be overlapping. So maybe so I think it may be a good idea to discuss with the Spoonbill Sandpiper task force and see whether you can actually have the task force both for Spoonbill Sandpiper and also with Norman's Greenshank, because you are more or less covering the same range from Russia down to Thailand and Myanmar and those countries. Maybe that would be an idea to discuss with them. Just my suggestion. Yeah,
thank you, Simba. We gotta work smarter, not harder, right? So maybe it's a good idea to combine forces as well.
Thank you. Yeah. So if anyone is interested in collaborating or joining the task force, I guess you can contact Philip, and let me see lastly if there is any questions. I don't see any, but there's still some discussions about the mode in the chat if people are interested. So thanks again everyone for coming to this webinar. And yeah, I think it's towards the end of the time that we finish. But it's really great to have really nice speakers about conservation and research work on Norman's greenshank, and also other species like the black-tailed godwit in the flyway, and to share with us our newest results. And yeah, it's really, I hope that it will be a start to some future collaborations. And so yeah, still a lot we have to learn about the Norman's greenshank for sure. So everyone, I hope you keep your eyes on the future development of the projects of our speakers, and see you next time.
Thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you everybody.
Thanks for joining.